My name is Luke Harris, and I'm about to tell you how I destroyed my cheating wife's life using nothing but a hard hat, some construction skills, and one hell of a lot of patience. But first, let me set the scene with the moment that started it all, the night I delivered Chinese food to my wife's lover while she was wearing his shirt. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I've been a construction project manager for 12 years, building everything from strip malls to apartment complexes across Cleveland's industrial district. The pay's decent, but with Natalie's expensive tastes and our mortgage, I'd been pulling double duty as an Uber Eats driver 3 nights a week. Nothing glamorous about delivering pad thai at 11 p.m., but bills don't pay themselves. That Tuesday night in March, I was wrapping up my delivery shift when a big order came through. $87 worth of Chinese food going to the Lofts, one of those overpriced downtown apartment buildings where personal trainers and social media influencers pretend they're successful. The tip was generous enough that I didn't mind the late hour. I should have known something was wrong when Natalie claimed she was working late again. My wife had been pulling these mysterious overtime sessions for weeks, always at the marketing firm where she managed campaigns for high-end fashion brands. She'd come home smelling like expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine, her phone buzzing constantly with messages she'd never let me see. "Just some client drama," she'd say, clutching her iPhone like it contained state secrets. "You know how demanding these fashion people can be." I knew, all right. I just didn't know how demanding they could be of my wife's body. The Lofts building had one of those pretentious glass lobbies with modern art that looked like someone sneezed on canvas. I was balancing 3 bags of Chinese food when I saw her through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Natalie, my wife of 6 years, sitting on a leather couch in the lobby, laughing at something on her phone. She was wearing a man's gray t-shirt that was definitely not mine. It was too tight across her chest and had some gym logo I didn't recognize. My first thought was confusion. What was Natalie doing here? My second thought was a cold realization that made my stomach drop faster than a crane cable snapping. I checked the delivery address again. Apartment 1247, T. Bennett, Troy Bennett. The name hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Natalie's college boyfriend, the one she'd dated for 3 years before we met. The personal trainer who still liked her Instagram photos and sent her birthday messages that were always just a little too friendly. The guy she claimed was just an old friend whenever his name came up. I stood there in that lobby, holding Chinese food worth more than I made in half a day of construction work, watching my wife giggle at her phone in another man's shirt. She was barefoot, her toes painted that deep red color she only used for special occasions. Her hair was messed up in that way that I hadn't seen in months. The elevator ride to the 12th floor felt like descending into hell, except hell was moving upward and playing smooth jazz. My hands were shaking as I knocked on apartment 1247. Troy opened the door, and I had to admit the bastard looked good. 6'2", muscled in that gym rat way that comes from having nothing better to do than lift weights all day, with the kind of tan that screamed, "I spend my afternoons by the pool instead of working a real job." He was shirtless, naturally, because guys like Troy are always shirtless. "Food's here, babe," he called over his shoulder. That's when Natalie appeared behind him, wine glass in hand, face flushed with alcohol and satisfaction. When she saw me, the color drained from her cheeks so fast I thought she might faint. "Luke," she whispered, like saying my name might make me disappear. I looked at her, then at Troy, then back at her. The gray shirt she was wearing had Troy's Gym printed across the front in bold letters. Real subtle. "Evening, Natalie," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Working late again, I see." Troy had the decency to look uncomfortable, but not embarrassed. Guys like him never get embarrassed. They just get defensive. "Look, man, this isn't," he started. $87.50 for the food, I interrupted, holding out the bags. Plus tip, if you're feeling generous. Troy fumbled for his wallet while Natalie stood frozen like a deer in headlights. I could smell her perfume, the expensive stuff she only wore for special occasions. Apparently, cheating on your husband qualified. "Here's $100, Troy said, shoving a bill at me. "Keep the change." I took the money and looked directly at Natalie. "You forgot something at home." "What?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Your wedding ring," I said. "It's still on the nightstand where you left it, though I guess it doesn't match your new outfit." I turned and walked away, leaving them both standing in that doorway. I could hear Natalie calling my name, but I didn't look back. The elevator doors closed on her panicked voice, and I rode down to the lobby in silence. Back in my truck, I sat in the parking garage for 20 minutes, staring at the steering wheel and trying to process what I'd just witnessed. My wife of 6 years, the woman who'd promised to love and honor me, was upstairs screwing her college boyfriend while I delivered their dinner. My phone started buzzing. Natalie, calling frantically. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her sobbing explanation about how it wasn't what it looked like, how she could explain everything, how much she loved me. Bullshit. I knew exactly what it looked like. But here's the thing about construction work. It teaches you patience. You don't build a foundation by rushing. You plan, you measure twice, you cut once, and you make sure everything is solid before you move to the next step. Natalie wanted to play games? Fine. But she was about to learn that her husband didn't just build buildings. He could tear them down, too. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to Derek's place, my best friend and fellow construction worker who lived in a duplex about 10 minutes from our job site. Derek Martinez had been my drinking buddy since we started working together 8 years ago, and he was the only person I trusted with this situation. "You look like someone just told you concrete was illegal," Derek said when he opened his door at midnight. He was holding a beer and wearing a Cleveland Browns jersey that had seen better decades. "Worse," I said, pushing past him into his living room. "I just caught Natalie cheating." Derek's expression shifted from confusion to anger to determination in about 3 seconds. "That bitch! What happened?" I told him everything. The delivery, the shirt, Troy's smug face, Natalie's panic. Derek listened without interrupting, occasionally shaking his head or muttering curses under his breath. "So what's the plan?" he asked when I finished. "Please tell me we're not just going to let her walk all over you." "Oh, we're definitely not doing that," I said. "But we're going to be smart about it. I'm not losing half my assets and paying alimony because I couldn't control my temper." Derek grinned. "Now you're talking. What do you need?" "Information, evidence, and a place to stay while I figure this out." "My couch is your couch, brother. But first, we need to secure your finances." Derek was right. The next morning, while Natalie was presumably still at Troy's place, I went home and gathered every financial document I could find. Bank statements, credit card bills, investment accounts, mortgage papers, everything. Over the past 3 months, Natalie had been spending money like she was preparing for something. Expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never been to, hotel charges on nights she claimed to be working late, shopping sprees at Victoria's Secret and high-end boutiques. She'd even bought a weekend trip to Chicago that I'd never heard about. The hotel charges were the smoking gun, the Marriott downtown, the same hotel that was 3 blocks from Troy's gym. She'd been there 6 times in the past 2 months, always on nights she told me she was working late on client presentations. I photographed everything, uploaded it to a secure cloud account, and then called my bank to add extra security to our joint accounts. Not to steal money, that would be illegal, but to make sure I'd know if she tried to clean us out. My phone had been buzzing constantly with calls and texts from Natalie. Her messages evolved from panic to anger to desperation. "Luke, please call me back. I can explain everything. This isn't what you think. Troy was just helping me with something. You're being ridiculous. Come home so we can talk." Fine, be childish, but this is your fault for not trusting me. I'm coming home. We need to discuss this like adults. That last message came at 2 p.m., while I was at the construction site trying to focus on work. I called Derek immediately. She's heading home, I said. Time for phase 2. Derek and I had spent the morning planning. We weren't going to do anything illegal or violent. We were smarter than that. But we were going to make sure Natalie understood exactly what she'd thrown away. I got home before she did and spent an hour setting up. I moved all of her expensive clothes, shoes, and jewelry into the guest bedroom. I changed the locks on the house, perfectly legal since my name was on the deed. And I printed out every hotel receipt, restaurant charge, and suspicious transaction from our bank statements, spreading them across the kitchen table like evidence in a murder trial. Natalie arrived at 3:30, still wearing Troy's shirt. She looked like she'd been crying, but I wasn't feeling particularly sympathetic. She tried her key first, jiggling it in the lock when it wouldn't turn. Then she knocked. Luke? Luke, open the door. My key isn't working. I opened the door but left the chain latch engaged, so she could only see part of my face. New locks, I said simply. What? Luke, this is my house too. You can't just… Actually, I can. My name's on the deed. Yours isn't. Her face went white. We'd talked about adding her name to the deed after we got married, but somehow it never happened. At the time, it seemed like paperwork we could deal with later. Now I was grateful for the procrastination. Let me in, she said, her voice getting sharp. We need to talk. We can talk right here. How was your night at Troy's? It's not what you think. Really? Because what I think is that you've been screwing your ex-boyfriend for months while lying to me about working late. These bank statements suggest I'm right. I held up a hotel receipt through the crack in the door. The Marriott, February 15th. You told me you were working on the Henderson campaign that night. Natalie's composure cracked. Luke, please, I made a mistake. I was confused, and Troy was there for me when you were always working, and you decided the best way to handle marital problems was to cheat instead of talking to your husband. It didn't mean anything. Then why did you do it 6 times? Why did you buy lingerie you never wore for me? Why did you take a romantic weekend in Chicago with him? She started crying then, the kind of manipulative tears that might have worked on me a year ago. But I'd seen her laughing in Troy's apartment, wearing his shirt like a trophy. Those tears weren't for me. They were for herself. Your stuff is in the guest bedroom, I said. You can pick it up tomorrow when I'm at work. Leave your key on the kitchen counter. Luke, please don't do this. I love you. No, you don't. You love the security I provide. You love having someone to pay half the bills while you screw around with your ex-boyfriend. But you don't love me. I started to close the door, but she pushed against it. Where am I supposed to go? Try Troy's place. You seemed comfortable there. He doesn't want me to stay there permanently. And there it was. The truth. Troy was happy to screw my wife, but he didn't want the responsibility that came with her. She'd thrown away 6 years of marriage for a guy who saw her as a convenient hookup. That sounds like a you problem, I said, and closed the door. She stood on the porch for another 10 minutes, alternating between begging and threatening, before finally leaving. I watched through the window as she sat in her car, crying and making phone calls, probably trying to find someone who'd take her in now that her safety net was gone. Derek came over that evening with pizza and beer. We sat in my living room, eating dinner and planning the next phase of my revenge. So what's the long-term strategy? He asked. Complete social and financial destruction, I said, but legal and justified. I like it. Where do we start? With her job. Natalie's been bragging for months about this big promotion she's up for, senior marketing director. Apparently the company is really strict about their image and professional conduct. Derek grinned. And cheating on your husband while using company credit cards for hotel rooms probably violates their conduct policy. Probably. especially when I have documentation of every transaction. I'd already done my research. Natalie's company, Prestige Marketing, handled campaigns for luxury brands that prided themselves on family values and traditional elegance. Their employee handbook, which I'd found on their website, had strict clauses about personal conduct that could reflect poorly on the company. Phase 3 starts tomorrow, I said. Time to introduce Natalie's boss to her extracurricular activities. Derek raised his beer bottle. To justice served cold. To justice served with documentation, I corrected, clinking bottles with him. Outside, it started to rain, and I couldn't help but think about Natalie, probably crying in some hotel room, finally understanding that actions have consequences. But this was just the beginning. By the time I was done, she'd understand exactly what she'd lost, and Troy would too. I spent Wednesday morning at the construction site, but my mind was on demolition rather than building. Around 10 a.m., I took my lunch break early and drove to Prestige Marketing's downtown office. The building was one of those sleek glass towers that screamed, "We charge too much for simple services," which made sense given what I knew about Natalie's salary. I'd prepared a manila envelope containing printed copies of all the hotel receipts, restaurant charges, and credit card statements showing Natalie's affair. I also included a timeline I'd created, cross-referencing her claimed work schedule with her actual spending patterns. The evidence was damning and professionally presented. I'd learned a thing or two about documentation in construction. The receptionist was a young woman with purple hair and enough piercings to set off a metal detector. "I need to speak with Mr. Harrison about a conduct issue involving one of his employees," I said, using the name I'd found on the company website, Robert Harrison, Senior Partner. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but this is regarding potential misuse of company resources and violations of your conduct policy. I think he'd want to see this immediately." She looked uncertain, but the official-sounding language did the trick. "Let me see if he's available." 10 minutes later, I was sitting across from Robert Harrison in his corner office. He was exactly what I'd expected. Mid-50s, expensive suit. The kind of guy who probably played golf with clients and called it business development. "Mr. Harris," he said, reading from the business card I'd given him. "You said this was about a conduct issue?" "It's about my wife, Natalie Harris. She's one of your marketing managers." His expression became guarded. "I see. What seems to be the problem?" I slid the envelope across his desk. "My wife has been having an affair for the past 3 months. Normally, that would be a personal matter, but she's been using what appear to be company resources to facilitate this relationship." Harrison opened the envelope and began examining the documents. His frown deepened as he read through the timeline. "These hotel charges," he said slowly, "they correspond with nights she claimed to be working late on client presentations." "Exactly. And these restaurant charges are from places she told me were client dinners, but according to my investigation, she was there with her lover, not clients." "How did you obtain this information?" "Bank statements from our joint account, which she used for these expenses. Everything here is legally obtained and documented." Harrison was quiet for several minutes, studying the papers. Finally, he looked up at me. "Mr. Harris, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. We take professional conduct very seriously at Prestige Marketing. Our clients trust us to represent their brands with integrity." "I understand Natalie is up for a promotion," I said. "I thought you should know about this before making any decisions about advancing someone who's been lying about their whereabouts and potentially misrepresenting personal expenses as business costs." "Indeed." Harrison's tone was ice cold now. "We'll be conducting an internal investigation immediately. Thank you for bringing this matter to our attention." I left the building feeling satisfied, but not vindictive. I hadn't lied or exaggerated. I'd simply provided documented evidence of Natalie's behavior to her employer. What they did with that information was their choice. My phone rang as I was driving back to the construction site. "Derek," How'd it go? He asked. Professional and by the book. Her boss didn't look happy. Good. Listen, I did some digging on Troy Bennett like you asked. You're going to love this. Derek had spent his morning researching Troy's business, Troy's elite fitness training. What he'd found was interesting. The guy's barely scraping by, Derek said. His gym membership is month to month because he can't afford an annual contract. His apartment is way above his means, and he's got 3 credit cards that are probably maxed out. He's living the Instagram lifestyle on a food stamp budget. How do you know all this? My cousin works at the credit union where he banks. Also, I may have created a fake profile and messaged some of his female clients, pretending to be interested in training services. Half of them warned me that he's unprofessional and hits on married women. I had to admire Derek's thoroughness. So, he's got a pattern. Oh yeah. Your wife isn't his first affair with a married client. Apparently, he specializes in bored housewives with disposable income. That stung more than I wanted to admit. I'd thought Natalie's affair was about genuine feelings, some kind of rekindled college romance. Learning that she was just another conquest in Troy's pattern of seducing married women made it worse somehow. There's more, Derek continued. He's got a girlfriend. Well, had. Sarah something. She found out about his side activities last week and kicked him out. That's why he was so eager to have Natalie over. He needs a place to crash. So Natalie wasn't just cheating on me, she was helping Troy cheat on his girlfriend too. And now that his girlfriend had dumped him, he was using my wife as a temporary housing solution. Classy. What's the plan for Troy? Derek asked. Patience, I said. Natalie's going to fall first, and when she does, she'll take him down with her. I was right. At 4:30 that afternoon, while I was reviewing blueprints for a new retail complex, my phone exploded with calls and texts from Natalie. Luke, something terrible has happened at work. I need to talk to you. They're blaming me for things that aren't my fault. Please call me back. I know you're angry, but this is affecting my career. We need to work together. Luke, please. I'm about to lose my job. I didn't call her back. Instead, I waited until 6 p.m. and then drove past her office building. I saw her car in the parking lot, and through the glass windows, I could see her in what looked like a very unpleasant meeting with Harrison and another executive. At 7:15, she came out of the building carrying a cardboard box. Even from a distance, I could see she'd been crying. She sat in her car for a long time before starting the engine. My phone rang immediately. Luke, they fired me. Her voice was thick with tears. They said I violated company policy and misrepresented business expenses. They're not even giving me severance. That's unfortunate, I said, keeping my voice neutral. You did this, didn't you? You went to my boss. I provided documented evidence of your behavior to your employer. What they chose to do with that information was their decision. Those were personal expenses. I wasn't stealing from the company. You were claiming to work late while you were actually in hotel rooms with your boyfriend. You were saying you had client dinners when you were on dates. That's misrepresentation at minimum, fraud at worst. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I need to come home. I need to get my things and figure out what to do next. Your things are packed. You can pick them up tomorrow. Luke, I have nowhere to go. Troy says his place is too small for both of us long term. Again, that sounds like a you problem. I'm your wife. You were my wife. Now you're just someone who used to live in my house. I hung up and turned off my phone. Derek was right. Justice served cold was definitely more satisfying than hot revenge. But we were just getting started. Natalie had lost her job, but she still had her social circle, her reputation, and her relationship with Troy. By the time I was finished, she'd understand the full cost of betrayal. Tomorrow, we'd start working on Phase 4. Social destruction. Thursday morning brought the kind of cold rain that makes construction work miserable, but I was in an excellent mood. I'd slept better than I had in months. probably because I wasn't sharing a bed with a liar. Derek met me at our usual coffee shop before work, grinning like he'd won the lottery. "You need to see this," he said, sliding his phone across the table. "Check out Troy's Instagram from last night." The post was a shirtless gym selfie, because of course it was, with the caption, "Sometimes life throws you curveballs, but champions adapt and overcome. New opportunities ahead. Blessed, never give up. Grind never stops." "What's he talking about?" I asked. His gym dropped him. Apparently, word got around about his habit of sleeping with married clients, and the management decided he was a liability. Too many complaints from husbands and boyfriends. I looked at Derek suspiciously. "How exactly did word get around?" "Well, you know how these things happen. Someone might have created some fake online reviews mentioning his unprofessional behavior with married women. And maybe someone called the gym pretending to be a concerned husband, asking about their policies on trainers who seduce clients." "Derek, hey, I never lied. I just asked questions and shared publicly available information. It's not my fault if people drew their own conclusions." I had to admire his initiative, but I was also concerned about keeping everything legal and defensible. "We need to be careful," I said. "I don't want this coming back on us." "Relax. Everything I did was legitimate. Online reviews are free speech, and asking about business policies isn't illegal." He was right, but I still wanted to keep our revenge focused and proportional. Natalie was the one who'd betrayed our marriage vows. Troy was just a symptom of her choices. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Luke, this is Alyssa. Can we meet? I have information you need to know about Natalie." Alyssa Chen was Natalie's work best friend, a gossipy marketing coordinator who knew everyone's business. If she wanted to talk, it meant the story was spreading through Natalie's social circle. I agreed to meet her for lunch at a restaurant downtown. Alyssa was already there when I arrived, looking nervous and excited in that way people get when they have dramatic news to share. "Luke, I'm so sorry about everything," she said as soon as I sat down. I had no idea how bad it had gotten. How bad what had gotten? The affair. I mean, I knew Natalie was acting strange, and I suspected something was going on, but I didn't know she was being so reckless about it. Alyssa proceeded to tell me everything. How Natalie had been bragging about her amazing private life, without mentioning it wasn't with her husband. How she'd been showing off expensive gifts that Troy had supposedly bought her. Gifts I now realized I'd paid for through our joint account. How she'd been planning to ask for a divorce after getting her promotion so she could start fresh with Troy. "She was going to divorce me?" I asked. "She said you'd grown apart, that you didn't appreciate her anymore. She made it sound like the marriage was already over and she was just making it official." So Natalie hadn't just cheated, she'd been planning to leave me while letting me continue paying for her lifestyle until it was convenient for her to go. The calculated nature of it was almost worse than the betrayal itself. "There's something else," Alyssa said, lowering her voice. "She asked me to lie for her if anyone asked about her whereabouts on specific dates. She gave me a whole story about working late on projects that didn't exist. Are you willing to put that in writing? If it helps you in the divorce, yes. Natalie was my friend, but what she did was wrong. And the way she talked about you?" Alyssa shook her head. "She called you boring and predictable, said you were holding her back from the life she deserved." I thanked Alyssa for her honesty and drove back to work feeling oddly vindicated. Natalie hadn't just made a mistake or given in to temptation, she'd been actively planning to destroy our marriage while using me financially and emotionally until it suited her to leave. That evening, Derek and I met at his place to plan the next phase. I'd printed out Alyssa's written statement about Natalie's lies and requests for alibis, along with a timeline of the affair based on the new information. "So what's next?" Derek asked. "Social media," I said. "Natalie's always been obsessed with her online image. Time to show her friends and family who she really is." I'd been thinking about this carefully. I didn't want to post anything vindictive or cruel. I just wanted to tell the truth. So I crafted a simple, factual Facebook post. After 6 years of marriage, I've discovered that my wife Natalie has been having an affair with her college ex-boyfriend for the past 3 months. She's been lying about working late while actually staying in hotels with him, and she was planning to divorce me after getting a promotion at work. I'm sharing this because I believe in honesty and accountability. I wish her well in her future endeavors. I tagged Natalie and included a few of the hotel receipts as evidence, then posted it to my Facebook page. Within minutes, the comments started pouring in. "Oh my God, Luke, I'm so sorry. I always thought something was off about her. You deserve so much better. What a terrible thing to do to such a good guy." But the really interesting responses came from Natalie's side of the family. Her sister Jennifer called within an hour. "Luke, what the hell is this Facebook post?" "It's the truth, Jennifer. Ask your sister. She said you two were having problems, but she never mentioned an affair." "Well, now you know why we were having problems." Jennifer was quiet for a moment. "She's been staying with us since yesterday, crying about how you threw her out. She made it sound like you were being unreasonable." "Did she mention that I caught her at her boyfriend's apartment wearing his shirt?" "No, she definitely didn't mention that." "Ask her about Troy Bennett. Ask her about the hotel receipts. Ask her about the promotion she was waiting for before filing for divorce." Jennifer sighed. "Luke, I'm sorry. We had no idea. She's been playing the victim, saying you were controlling and suspicious." "I have documentation of everything, Jennifer. Bank statements, witness testimony, the whole thing. I'm not the bad guy here." After I hung up, Derek was grinning at me. "How does it feel to watch her world collapse?" "Satisfying," I admitted. "But we're not done yet." My phone was buzzing constantly now. Friends, family members, even some of Natalie's co-workers who'd seen the post. The story was spreading faster than I'd expected, and the response was overwhelmingly supportive of me. At 9 p.m., Natalie finally called. "How could you do this to me?" she screamed. "You've humiliated me in front of everyone." I told the truth. If the truth is humiliating, maybe you should have thought about that before cheating. "You've ruined my life. No one will hire me now. My family is furious with me, and my friends won't return my calls." Actions have consequences, Natalie. You made your choices. I made one mistake. You made dozens of mistakes over 3 months. You lied to me every day. You stole money from our joint account. You planned to divorce me while keeping me as your financial safety net. That's not one mistake. That's a pattern of deception. She started crying then, the kind of desperate sobs that come when someone realizes they've lost everything. "Luke, please take down the post. I'll do anything. I'll go to counseling. I'll cut off contact with Troy. I'll make this right." "It's too late for that." "Please, I love you." "No, you don't. You love the idea of having me as a backup plan while you explore other options. But I'm not your safety net anymore." I hung up and turned off my phone. Outside, the rain had stopped, and for the first time in months, the future looked bright. But I wasn't finished yet. Tomorrow, we'd deal with Troy directly. Friday morning brought unexpected developments. I woke up to find 17 missed calls from various numbers, including Natalie's sister, her mother, and several friends. But the most interesting call was from Troy himself. His voicemail was exactly what I'd expected. "Hey man, look, this situation has gotten out of hand. Natalie's a mess, and this whole thing is affecting both our lives. Maybe we can meet up and work something out like adults. I'm not the bad guy here. She came on to me. Call me back." Derek laughed when I played the message for him over coffee. "Oh, this is Rich. Now he wants to negotiate." "He's panicking," I said. "Natalie's unemployed and homeless. His gym dropped him, and their affair is public knowledge. He's probably realizing that he's stuck with a woman who has no money and nowhere else to go." "So, what's the plan?" "We meet with him, but on our terms, in a public place, with witnesses." I called Troy back and agreed to meet him at Murphy's Bar, a working-class dive near the construction site where Derek and I often grabbed beers after work. It was exactly the kind of place that would make a guy like Troy uncomfortable. No craft cocktails or artisanal anything, just honest drinks for honest people. Troy arrived 20 minutes late, probably trying to make some kind of power play. He looked like he'd slept in his car. Wrinkled clothes, unshaved, none of his usual Instagram-ready polish. Natalie's drama was clearly taking a toll on his carefully maintained image. "Luke," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. Derek sat beside me, arms crossed, looking like the kind of guy you wouldn't want to meet in a dark alley. "Troy, you look like hell." "Yeah, well, your wife has been crying for 3 days straight. It's not exactly a relaxing environment." "My wife? I thought she was your girlfriend now." Troy shifted uncomfortably. "Look, this whole thing got complicated fast. I never meant for it to go this far." "What did you think was going to happen? You seduce a married woman, convince her to throw away her marriage, and then what? You'd all live happily ever after?" "She said you guys were already having problems. She made it sound like the marriage was basically over." "So you thought you'd help it along?" Derek leaned forward. "Let me get this straight. You knew she was married. You knew she was lying to her husband, and you went along with it anyway?" "It wasn't like that," Troy said weakly. "What was it like?" I asked. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you helped my wife steal money from our joint account to pay for hotel rooms where you could screw her while I was working to support her lifestyle." Troy's face flushed. "I didn't know about the money thing." "Bullshit. You knew those hotel rooms weren't free. You knew those expensive dinners cost money. You just didn't care where it came from as long as you got what you wanted." The bartender, an older guy named Frank who'd been listening to our conversation, chimed in. "Sounds like a real piece of work, this one." Troy looked around the bar, realizing that our conversation was becoming public entertainment for the regulars. "Can we keep this private?" "Like you kept your hands off my wife?" Derek asked. "Look," Troy said, his voice getting desperate. "What do you want from me? An apology? Money? I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." "You can't make this right," I said. "You helped destroy a 6-year marriage. You turned my wife into a liar and a cheat. There's no fixing that." "Then what do you want?" I looked at him for a long moment. This pathetic man who'd thought he could steal another man's wife without consequences. "I want you to understand something," I said finally. "Natalie isn't some prize you won. She's a woman who was willing to betray the person who loved her most for a few months of excitement. If she'll cheat on me, she'll cheat on you." Troy's expression suggested this thought had already occurred to him. "And now you're stuck with her," Derek added. "She's got no job, no money, no place to live except your apartment. How long before that gets old?" "She's looking for work," Troy said weakly. "Good luck with that. Her professional reputation is shot, her personal references are compromised, and everyone in her social circle knows what she did. She's unemployable and unemployed." I stood up to leave, but Troy grabbed my arm. "Wait, what if she left? What if I convinced her to move away, start over somewhere else?" "You mean, what if you dumped her and left town? I mean, what if we both started fresh somewhere else?" I looked down at his hand on my arm until he let go. "Troy, you can do whatever you want. Move to California, join the circus, become a monk. I don't care. But understand this. You're not the victim here. You made choices, and now you get to live with the consequences." Derek and I left Troy sitting in that booth, staring into his beer like it might contain answers to his problems. Outside, Derek was practically bouncing with satisfaction. "Did you see his face when you said Natalie was unemployable? Priceless." The best part is that it's true. She's going to be completely dependent on him financially, and guys like Troy hate responsibility. "How long do you think they'll last?" 2 months, maybe 3. He'll get tired of supporting her, she'll get bitter about her situation, and they'll turn on each other. I was right. Over the next few weeks, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Troy and Natalie's relationship was deteriorating rapidly. She was pressuring him to make their relationship official while he was looking for ways to escape the situation he'd created. The final blow came 6 weeks later, when Natalie discovered that Troy had been messaging other women on dating apps, trying to line up his next conquest. She confronted him. He told her she was too much drama, and she ended up moving back in with her sister, who made it clear the arrangement was temporary. But the real satisfaction came 3 months later, when I ran into Natalie at the grocery store. She looked tired, older somehow, wearing clothes I recognized from years ago. Her hair wasn't professionally styled anymore, and she'd lost the confident bearing that had once made her so attractive. "Luke?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Natalie, how are you doing?" "I'm managing. I got a job at a call center. It's not much, but it's something." "That's good. Everyone needs to work." We stood there awkwardly for a moment, two people who'd once shared everything and now had nothing to say to each other. "Luke," she said finally, "I want you to know that I'm sorry. Really sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I regret everything." I looked at her. This woman who'd thrown away 6 years of marriage for a few months of excitement, with a man who'd dumped her the moment she became inconvenient. "I believe you're sorry," I said. "I just wish you'd thought about consequences before you made your choices." "Is there any chance?" she started, then stopped. "Never mind. Take care of yourself, Natalie." I walked away, leaving her standing in the cereal aisle, and I realized that I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity. She'd become irrelevant to my life, just another person I used to know. 6 months later, I heard that Troy had moved to Phoenix, claiming he needed a fresh start. Natalie was still working at the call center, still living with her sister, still dealing with the consequences of her choices. As for me, I kept the house, kept my job, and eventually started dating again. I learned to trust my instincts, to value honesty above all else, and to never again mistake someone's presence in my life for their loyalty to it. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in October. I signed the papers, shook hands with my lawyer, and drove home to a house that was finally, completely mine. That evening, Derek came over with beer and pizza, just like old times. "So how does it feel to be officially single?" he asked. "Like I dodged a bullet," I said. "A 6-year-long bullet. Any regrets?" I thought about it for a moment. Just one. I regret not seeing who she really was sooner. Well, now you know, and knowing is half the battle. We drank our beer and watched the game. Two friends in a house that no longer held any lies or secrets. Outside, autumn was turning the leaves gold and red, and everything felt like a new beginning. The best revenge, I realized, wasn't destroying Natalie's life. It was building a better one without her in it.